All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick, who is on the Pacific Ocean, first ocean podcast we've done in a while / ever. Today, we're going to talk about the Premier League after the first weekend, and there's been a lot of happenings on the injury front and the transfer front. Then we're going to talk a little week 2 of the NFL preseason, just a macro look at those. Then we'll get into one of my favorite markets, which is the US Open outright on the women's side, which is pretty wide open, unlike the men's side, but we'll jump into that. But first, as we watch the ocean go by in the background for Drew, a team that's kind of taking a little bit of a dive into the ocean is the Manchester City with Kevin De Bruyne, who is, I don't know, 4th, 5th best player in the world, something like that. He's out for 4 months with a hamstring injury. That's a pretty big deal after they already lost Ilkay Gundogan. So they're down their 2 best midfielders from last year. And now all of a sudden, the squad looks a little bit more thin. And they are still the heavy favourites to win the Premier League outright. They're minus 150, which is very, very short for a team that has its injury problems and is with this much season to go, aka all of it. Arsenal behind them plus 450, Liverpool 8-1, Man United 10-1, Chelsea, Newcastle 14-1. Any leans on this market, Drew?
Well, I mean, Manchester City, I really want to bet against these guys. I just don't know how to do it, Jay. How do we do this? I mean, Liverpool, I feel like bottled their transfer opportunities to a degree. I wanted to be inspired by Liverpool and maybe grab a price in the 8-1 range, but I really don't entirely understand their vision in terms of roster building there. I have a little bit of Chelsea 16-1 in pocket thanks to you. It's shortened to 14-1. It's not enough to really get the any kind of hopes up, obviously, but it does feel like to a degree things are a little wide open. At least to start the season. So somebody's going to get shortened here. Arsenal, obviously, I know they were, they were ahead for 7/8 of last season's campaign. Yeah. They came down to the very end before they ultimately got caught by Man City. But it does feel like this thing is way more wide open than expected, and the injuries have a huge amount to do with that. So if you're willing to make a case for someone that I should add in addition to Chelsea, I'm willing to listen. I'm already disappointed in my spirited support of the of Brighton and Hove. As soon as they start selling off parts, right after kind of saying that I was excited about that team's continuity. So I don't really want to give anyone the kiss of death, but are you feeling Gunners supporting Liverpool or just ride it out here with Chelsea?
Yeah, I think Chelsea are interesting. They're the other big team in the news where they've effectively signed Brighton's best player. They signed Crystal Palace's best player, Michael Olise, and they signed Southampton, who are now in the Championship, their best player in Romeo Lavia, arguably their best player. And so now all of a sudden, they are pretty stocked. At the same time, I think they're just with the first year under Poch, not sure they'll have the continuity. Not having any European football will help them. But I think the team is Liverpool. And if you hunt around, you can find some 11-1 about Liverpool. I think that's too big. I always find it interesting just to look at the money line prices from the first match day. I mean, the Premier League money lines are just about the hardest market in the world to beat. It's an extremely liquid market. Tells you a lot about how sharps evaluate these teams. And the fact that Liverpool closed plus 115 on the 3-way money line, decent favourites over Chelsea away at Stamford Bridge. I thought that was pretty interesting. And now Chelsea are better than that because they've now signed Caicedo, Olise, and Lavia, but that was still pretty telling. And also the other thing too is that Liverpool were ready to hand over $100 million for Moses Caicedo, and they don't get him. So they've still got that 100 mil or so in the kitty, just waiting to spend on someone. So I suspect that they will upgrade their midfield. And in the 11-1 range, I think they're probably the best bet as an outsider. The other team that's interesting, and the team who looked like the best team on planet Earth on match day 1 was Newcastle. And Newcastle, who, just as a point of reference, they play Liverpool in a week or so, and they're plus 120 on the 3-way money line against Liverpool at home, whereas Chelsea were plus 200. So that's interesting as well, that the market definitely rates Newcastle. We're still a fair way out, so it's not as efficient as it will be at close, but also thought that was interesting. Newcastle, I think, just if they have their full squad and they're rested, I think their starting 11 stacks up to just about anyone outside of City. But the problem for them is that they have to play in the Champions League, which they didn't have to deal with last year. And that is going to disrupt the squad that probably just doesn't have the depth of these other teams. So I think Newcastle at full strength are as good as just about anyone, but over the course of a season with the attrition that they'll have to deal with, not too interested in them. But what do you think about Liverpool?
Yeah, okay, so my player level ELO makes them the second best team in the Premier League right now. So the fact that just the fact that they're 8-1, 11-1, whatever price you can find, it's enticing. You make a great point. Having $100 million sitting around to go get a couple more pieces or just one really good piece is exciting. So, gosh, man, they probably should have beaten Chelsea in match day 1. And then maybe we wouldn't be getting these prices, I suppose. So I guess that's an ad. I just like the opportunity to bet against City right now, considering what they're going through. And disruption to the midfield is always a huge red flag, particularly early in the season like this.
Yeah, if Darwin Nunez, who basically had the ball handed to him on a platter with 5 minutes or so to go against Chelsea and just miscontrolled it, if he puts that in the back of the net, then all of a sudden I think the vibe around Liverpool is completely different. I don't understand Arsenal being this short at all. I say that as an Arsenal fan. I just think, look back to last year, they were only 5 expected points clear of Liverpool. Arsenal played the same starting 11, I want to say 88% of the time last year, and didn't have to deal with the Champions League. This year, all of a sudden, they're in the Champions League. They're going to deal with more injuries. Timber, their new defensive signing, he's already torn his ACL. They got about half an hour out of him. And the fact that now you're going into Tomiyasu and Ben White playing out wide, they're already dealing with some depth issues. So I think Liverpool just head-to-head should rank basically even with Arsenal, and the fact that they're double their price doesn't make any sense to me, particularly given the fact that, again, Liverpool came into last season, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think they're like plus 250 to win the Premier League, and Arsenal were 50-1, and then Arsenal finished 5 expected points above them, and now we're completely flipped. Like, it just doesn't entirely make sense to me. So I think Liverpool are the bet. Before we get into the NFL preseason, a reminder that with the NFL season quickly approaching, now is the perfect time to get your Roto-World Fantasy Football Draft Guide. Drew, get ready for your draft and stay one step ahead of your league during the preseason with updated player rankings, profiles, projections, mock drafts, and more. Go to NBCsports.com/draft guide and use code DRAFT2023 to save 20% at checkout. All right. NFL preseason week 2, the last of the real fake games before we get into the weirdness of NFL preseason week 3. In terms of week 1, it was heavy to the overs, 7-1 to the over on Saturday and Sunday. Underdogs went 9-5 against the spread. Anything to read into that, or is that just randomness in 1 week?
I mean, I don't think there was a ton to read in that. I was more intrigued by just the fact that some of the really, really strong steamed sides did not come through at all. And that felt chaotic. A lot of the results were super random, driven by late, end of game states that were with players who are, 80th on the roster, making kind of key plays. It was a very, very weird week 1. And I would expect in general that, the informational moves are a little bit more, rewarding this year. That said, I don't get the steam on the Philadelphia Eagles, Jay. I don't think that they should be, meaningful favorites over the Browns on Thursday. And I think I'm going to end up with the Browns position here at some point. I think 3.5 is the buy point. I think capturing the 3 matters a ton in the preseason, particularly this week where we're going to see more of the starters. Now, I know that the Browns aren't going to put Deshaun Watson out there. They're starting with Dorian Thompson-Robinson is going to play the first half of this game, and Kellen Mond's going to play the second half of this game. But I absolutely have been blown out of my socks with how well DTR has been operating the quarterback position this year. And if it's been because he's been playing against fourth-string defenses, then maybe that explains it. But they're going to put him up against the a more talented unit with the Philadelphia Eagles to start this season. But, he has the exact right recipe of tools to really be a preseason darling. And so I think it all makes sense. I think the Browns can win this game, and I definitely think capturing the 3 is value in this spot. So Browns plus 3.5 for me. And, this is all kind of goes by the wayside, but the Eagles are a relatively thin team right now. Like, if this comes down to how the second units perform in the second half of this game, the Eagles' second unit offensive line has weaknesses, and the defense has been stripped down to a lot of really inexperienced players. So I think in general, this is a decent spot for the Browns playing their 3rd preseason game against the second preseason game for the Eagles to get a win or at least cover 3.5. So. Thursday night football is back, and I'm going to be rocking Cleveland Brown.
Yep, I like it. Preseason god DTR. He was born to wreck this competition. In terms of other major moves from Open, Panthers Giants, that total has steamed up 3 points to 39. Dolphins opened +5 against the Texans. They're now +3. Colts steaming a little bit on the line. The Jets, that line has moved a field goal against the Bucs in their favor. And then the Broncos from -2 to -4. And at the Cowboys-Seahawks total has jumped up a couple of points. Any of those moves that you're interested in chasing the steam there, or anything you like to go the other way on, similar to the Browns?
Jets makes a ton of sense to me. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive line is in shambles right now. The Jets and their depth, particularly on the D-line, should be enough to control that game, I would guess. And similarly, I agree with the Packers team too. That offense looked like it had moments where they were operating at a much higher level than a lot of the other preseason first-string offenses. And while the Patriots defense is a unit I have a ton of respect for, this Patriots offensive line is having issues as well. So I'm not going to run and grab and lay the 3.5 points with the Packers, but I agree with that directional move, and I think the Jets -2.5 makes sense as well. Again, this is their 3rd preseason game, so you have a little bit more continuity, and this is a little bit more of a game where I think you're going to determine some serious, roster spot availability. So Jets are fun, Browns are fun. Those are the only 2 that I really have my eyes on right now.
Yep, I like that. I bet some Bucs at 10-1 to have the worst record in the NFL. I think they are the second worst team in the league after the Cardinals, I'd say, and their schedule to start isn't super kind either. They go at Minnesota, Chicago, Philadelphia, at New Orleans, Detroit, Atlanta, at Buffalo. I think there's a good chance that they're going to start off the season with, could be 1-6, and it's Kyle Trask time. And if it's Kyle Trask time, then I think that they are pretty live to have the worst record. All right, before we get into your wheelhouse, the US Open Women's outright, a reminder that MLB Sunday leadoff heads to Texas, where the Seattle Mariners take on last year's World Series champions, the Houston Astros. Watch these 2 teams not only battle for position in the AL West, but for the postseason as well. Catch the action live this Sunday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Peacock. All right, US Open Women's Singles Contenders. I think the beauty with all these outright markets is that outside of the French, where her favoritism is very much justified, Iga Swiatek starts every other Grand Slam about 3 times as short as she should be. She's +225 to win the US Open ahead of familiar faces Aryna Sabalenka and Elena Rybakina. And then we have Jess Pegula at 8-1. I could not dream of backing Caroline Garcia at 10-1 to win the US Open. Sorry, Caroline. And then the very much in form Coco Gauff, who seems to have really changed up her forehand. And then Ons Jabeur, who I'm not going to be getting involved with. Vondrousova. And then the girl I want to get your opinion on, Liudmilla Samsonova. But what's your early read on the odds board?
Yeah, I think my general sentiment that the field was catching Iga as we previewed Wimbledon had a lot to do with grass and Iga's inexperience there. I do think that she is the class of the field in terms of hard court, at least the slower hard court. And I'm assuming that we're going to see slower conditions at the U.S. Open than what we see at the likes of Australia or even at Cincinnati. Typically, the U.S. Open, plays pretty similarly to Indian Wells. It's a little bit faster than Indian Wells, but I would expect that Iga ought to be the clear favorite here. And I think Sabalenka and Rybakina, who closed the gap big time on her over the balance of the first half of the season, neither has been in especially good form. Rybakina has not bounced back from the illness she suffered at the French Open. And Sabalenka looks like she's had the double fault issues creep back into her game in a way that's taken her out of some matches that she should otherwise have won without really much of a sweat. I think you can pretty much put a line through Sabalenka and Rybakina at those prices. I think they're vulnerable to even get into the semifinal range of this tournament. Jess Pegula, congratulations on winning Montreal. That was a very hard fought, certainly quarterfinal, semifinal. But she basically got Samsonova to lay down after very quick turnaround, beating Rybakina, and didn't really have much of a challenge in the final itself. I don't think Pegula at a Grand Slam setting with the pressure of the U.S. Open and at the price of 8-1 is something I want any part of. But Coco Gauff at 10-1 is intriguing to me because I don't know if Pegula and Gauff felt the pressure of the fact that they really weren't performing especially well this season, or if they felt the pressure of they weren't doing well in the rankings. The season-ending rankings, neither one was coming close to their performances last year. So to a degree, I think there was an importance for both of them in this stage of their careers to really turn it up at this point in the calendar, and they're coming off now back-to-back. Each a respective title, Coco Gauff in DC and Pegula in Montreal, and I think if either one of them shows up well here in Cincinnati, they have a decent chance to go off either second favorite or second favorite for the U.S. Open, as there is a general spirit to bet the U.S. players at this tournament. Coco Gauff would be my lean between those two, just given the quality that I've seen from her, particularly in DC. And I think, realistically, there are elements to her game that we just didn't see at all in the first 7 months of the season. So excited to see her. I hope she does well. Obviously, cheering for Americans at the U.S. Open is an easy ask for me. But, down the board, if I had to take a shot on, you make a great point. Caroline Garcia is wildly out of form. And if I had to take a long shot on a relative unknown, because, to a degree, the U.S. Open is a little bit of a coming out party opportunity. A lot of these players have played a lot of tennis this season. There's fatigue issues. There are travel issues with how much travel they're doing in the hottest part of the season. So, there are definitely opportunities for lesser known players to break out. And the one that's not on this list that intrigues me is Mirra Andreeva. She showed us something special at the French Open. She's backed it up with solid results here and there, but albeit not like being a mainstay on tour. Draw is going to determine a lot of how far she goes in this tournament, but I'm excited to see what she looks like at the U.S. Open, and I'm going to price shop for the best price on her before she, really starts to steam as we get closer to this thing kicking off.
Yeah, no, that's a good point on Andreeva, who is going to win a Grand Slam at some point, and who knows, it could be this time around in New York. Liudmilla Samsonova, who broke my heart last year. I think I had her like 70-1 to win the US Open because her lead-up form last year, she didn't lose a match in the lead-up to the US Open. She won back-to-back tournaments in Washington and Cleveland, and then talk about the US Open in a second. Then she won the tournament on hard court after the US Open in Tokyo, I want to say, and beating Elena Rybakina there as well. And then in the US Open, she was rolling. She got to the fourth round, hadn't dropped the set, and then just completely bottled it against Ayla Tomljanovic in a way that was a really impressive and aggressive bottling of it. And I know that's kind of Samsonova's MO, where she has, I think, all the tools. When she is on with her power, she can just be totally unplayable. And she's coming off a tournament now where she beat Aryna Sabalenka. She closed favorite in the market over Elena Rybakina, which I know you and I didn't understand, but still, the market closed her favorite and she beat her. And now there are prices out there where she's like 40-1, 50-1 to win the US Open. Surely you just can't be 50-1 to win the US Open if you just close favorite over Elena Rybakina and you just beat Aryna Sabalenka and Rybakina. Is she worth it at that kind of price? I know she's got some demons.
I worry about her fitness, surely. Like 2-week tournaments.
All right. Looks like the Pacific Ocean might have got Drew, so I'll close us out here. I think with Samsonova, I think what Drew probably going to say is that she's dealt with a lot of injuries and she just hasn't really had the experience of getting deep in Grand Slams. And whenever she has been in these monster matches, she has wilted a little bit. But I will still endorse a bet on Samsonova in the 40-1, 50-1 range. I think the talent is too great, and her form on hard court, particularly in these American swings the past 2 years, has just been, or North American swings the past 2 years, has just been so impressive that I think she is probably the best long shot. I don't think Swiatek at plus 225, even if she should be the favorite. I think if you just add up the money lines of what she's going to be in her 7 matches, you're going to get a better price than plus 225. And then outside of that, I mean, Ons Jabeur plus 1200, can't go down that road again. Vondrasova 14-1, again, far too short for her. So I think Samsonova is the best play. I think if you can get Coco Gauff in the 14-1, 16-1 range, which I think is out there. I think with the form that she showed recently, looking like a new player in a way, and at home as well, I think that is also worth a bet. And then you've just got to take on Sabalenka and Rybakina and Pegula, who could all win the US Open, but at these current prices, plus 450 Sabalenka, 6-1 Rybakina, 8-1 Pegula, you've just got to go down and take them on and not indulge in those kind of prices. And I think Iga, again, has to be a bet against at the current price, even if she is the most likely player to win. All right, we are done for now. Don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, please don't forget to rate and subscribe. And also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher, Drew Dinsick, and the Pacific Ocean, we'll be back tomorrow.